Good evening, Internet. It's Tuesday, May 12th, 2015. This is The Refinery, where grassroots organizations come together to refine conservative messaging into conventional wisdom. From the Conservative Union, I'm Leslie Price, also joined with Ryan Bickmore. From Free Radical Network, we have J.D. Bryden and Felicia Cravens. And from the Party of Choice, we have Corey and Andy Pate. We are live every Tuesday at 8:45 Central. You can view us live at therefineryshow.com, where you can also chat live with your hosts and our audience members. You can go to therefineryshow.com anytime to watch, listen, and subscribe to the show via YouTube or podcast. So tonight, on a rainy Tuesday in Houston, Texas, we first wanted to talk about kind of the fun story of the week, which is the most incredibly racist interview of a politician I've seen in a really long time, and it was Mark Halperin, who earns 7 figures a year with Bloomberg, and he interviewed Ted Cruz, and it was I'm sure there were some substantive questions in the interview, but the only parts anybody's seen, the only parts that really tell you anything about what the left is trying to do to us, those of us on the right, is the questions that Halperin was asking Ted Cruz about basically proving his Cuban authenticity. Asked him, what's your favorite Cuban food? Who's your favorite Cuban singer? What favorite Cuban music do you like? Would you like to say goodbye to the people en Espanol? I mean, it was absolutely the most offensive thing that I think I have ever seen. You know, if a Fox News reporter had interviewed Barack Obama and asked him, now how far can you spit a watermelon seed? And growing up, you're only half black, Mr. Obama, and you grew up with white people, and yet you want us to take you seriously as a black person. Can you demonstrate how you really are authentically black? That's basically what Halperin was doing to Cruz, accusing him, asking Cruz to prove that he is authentically Hispanic and can appeal to the Hispanic voter, even though he's actually Cuban and has this white wife and doesn't speak Hispanic or doesn't speak Spanish and live in white culture. I don't speak Hispanic either. Actually, being a Texan, I speak more Hispanic than Spanish.
Do you speak Austrian? Do you speak Austrian there, Les?
I speak fluent Austrian.
Awesome.
Absolutely. It's a live.
Are your corpsmen all lined up?
Yes, they are.
Good.
You're making fun of President Barry. But, Halperin got away with this. And what's really fascinating to me is that, as we all know, we live in this fake outrage or manufactured outrage culture where the clickbait headlines have to have exclamation points, and we have to have outraged people, and then we have to have a fake apology afterwards, and then we have to have the outraged people on behalf of the outraged person, and then we have to have a discussion of our outrage and all of that. But instead, in this thing, we had Halperin absolutely going over the top and being completely ridiculous in the questions that he asked, but Ted Cruz was just sort of politely answering the questions and kind of playing along. Not eagerly, not reluctantly. He wasn't snippy. He just sort of answered the questions. And then Halperin issued a really weird non-apology, and he published it as a PDF file on Scribd. I mean, it's like, dude, were you looking for the fewest possible people in the world to read this apology?
Yes, yes, he was.
Yes,
he was looking for the fewest possible people. It was like the worst apology. I don't know. I can't remember a worse apology than
that. Wasn't
this.
Even that was an anti-apology. That was he anti-published it.
Sorry for you. Sorry if you got offended at my questions. I mean,
he was sorry to the offended people that got offended. He wasn't apologizing really to anyone. But then Ted Cruz just said no apology was really needed. There were some silly questions, and we moved on. It was like, wow.
That's classic. The thing, though. I'm not really sure. Were we offended? I'm not sure that I'm offended as much as I'm I just want people to understand this is racist. It is legitimately racist what this guy was doing.
Right. That is. Do you want to know what racism is?
I'm not
That's
outraged.
racism.
It happened, but it's like, guys, there was no coded language here.
There was no dog whistling.
There were no dog whistles. This was overtly.
He's standing 100%. At the door hollering Fido. He's not dog whistling.
I mean, it's insane, and you know it's bad when Think Progress is out and defending Ted Cruz. I mean,
well, yeah. The headline on the Think Progress article is "The prize for the most racist interview of a 2016 candidate goes to Bloomberg's Mark Halperin." Dude,
that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought wow. I didn't, in my worst imagination, I would never even think that sure, you could think that maybe some local green sheet reporter is going to ask stupid questions like that. But Mark Halperin, he worked at one of the majors before he went to Bloomberg, didn't he? I mean, he's like a, quote, legitimate news person, unquote. And yeah, I mean, we put him
allegedly. I mean, somehow he managed to not. I don't know. He's not fired yet. He's somehow still still working at his job. I mean,
yeah, there'll be no repercussions at all.
He didn't get iked for it. He wasn't, thrown out because of that. He's still there, and I guess it was because he left the what instrument would you play in a hypothetical mariachi band? I guess since he left that one, that.
I was drinking, and you almost made a joke.
I'm sorry. That was unintentional. I was not timing that, but but that was the level of.
Do you prefer enchiladas or tamales? But actually, that's Mexican. You wouldn't ask that of a Cuban guy. He did ask him what's his favorite Cuban food.
Tostada.
Yeah, tostada. Tostada, exactly. That was the only acceptable answer there. At least Ezra Klein was actually unintentionally doing that. That was something that was unintentional. This guy,
those were
I don't know.
Prepared questions,
So, somebody he had to have had. He can't have been the only person working on this. Like, this is not something that Mark Halperin, does. He has a staffer for this, doesn't he?
And even if you're paid 7 figures, one would hope that you're able to think on your feet a little bit. And if you have this, if somebody trolled you and put in front of you this list of questions to ask that were so out of control, bizarre, that you would read it before you asked the question and you would set it aside and you would ask legitimate questions. He continued with this line of questioning. He thought it was a good idea to ask these questions of this candidate, and I just there's no way that anybody on the right has ever or will ever get away with being that racist in asking a politician a question. We wouldn't even think about it because that's just not
right.
That's just not who and what we are.
The interesting thing to me in all of this was, I think Noah Rothman at Hot Air had written about how well Cruz had handled it, how graciously, and that it did become, sort of the opportunity for people on the right to point this out, but for Ted Cruz not to engage in the nonsense. We look to, and there was actually criticism. Somebody tagged me and I think JD on Facebook in an article talking about it, and they were a little upset that Ted didn't go full Breitbart defense on on air during this, the way that Andrew Breitbart would have done. But I think it's different position if you're Andrew Breitbart than if you're a candidate. And I admire Ted's restraint there and really coming off looking like, this was no big deal. He's, a nice guy about it. He's a good sport. There's no attack there. Whereas in one way, if Halperin had done this and was setting Cruz up to, I think we talked about it in pre-show, play the minstrel, then they would have had that. On the other hand, if they were setting him up to do the outrage or even faux outrage about the racism, then they would have that. And it was like a lose-lose. And Ted Cruz found a third way. Wasn't that amazing?
And you got to figure, Cruz is a very well-seasoned trial lawyer. He thinks on his feet and knows the repercussions or knows the pros and cons of any kind of response that he's going to give while he's giving it. So I think it's pretty clear that his very measured play along, not just be minor kind of nothingness with his answers, was intentional on his part, because now the story is about how awful Mark Halperin is and how much of a racist Mark Halperin is. The focus of the story is not Ted Cruz and Ted Cruz getting all, sitting falling to his fainting couch because he's been offended or any of that. It's all about the lefty media being racists, and that allowed the focus to be where the focus needed to be rather than on Ted Cruz, which I thought was really pretty deftly handled. And again, it's another example of our guys handling the media environment much better now than they did 2 years ago and certainly 4 years ago. We've seen Carly Fiorina with a couple of really clever jabs. Right out of the gate, she was looking, ooh, she made a mistake. She didn't register carlyfiorina.org. Ooh, that could have been, and that was, I think the left was all prepared for that to be a big story about how the HP CEO, the tech princess, screwed up something so simple and so basic. And then when she was interviewed on Seth Meyers, she just looked at him and said, hey, do you know who owns SethMeyers.org? Oh, I do. I actually just bought it right there in the green room.
So where does it redirect to?
And it redirects to Carly for president. Oh yeah, and then also 2 days ago she did the same thing with not Mark Knoller, but Chuck Todd. She did the same thing with Chuck Todd, because Chuck Todd tried to toss the story to her about, oh, you made this big technical mistake. How is anybody going to trust you technically and trust your competence? She said, well, guess what? Do you own chucktodd.org? No, I do. And it redirects to, and also she bought.
The thing is, she didn't actually buy chucktodd.org. They actually, paid her to have chucktodd.org. Nobody wanted chucktodd.org. No.
Yeah. Well, and somebody else bought hillaryclinton.org and is redirecting that to Carly for president.
Yeah, and somebody bought that back in 1999.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a while. Ago. Yeah.
But and the other thing, when she was jabbing back with Seth Meyers, good-naturedly, Seth said, "Oh, Seth was trying to put one on her. Oh, you've got the money to do that." I mean, he was making a "you're rich" swipe at her, and she swiped back with, "It wasn't very expensive," which was funny and cutting on 2 layers, because domain names are not expensive to buy unless they are for really famous and really in high demand, which Seth Meyers was not. So yeah, that was Carly being aware of and hip to internet culture, and also thinking on her feet and being a bit cutting with Seth Meyers, and he handled it good-naturedly. But that's just another example of our team playing well, really playing
on abortion.
Well.
I mean,
yes,
we got. I'm like, I don't feel feverish. I think I'm lucid. We're
Are we
It's
still in the regular reality?
5 months.
Have we gone across the rainbow?
5 months into 2015, and nobody, like, I mean, I'm not going to start licking my camera, but that's about as bad as it's gotten.
Oh my God! What the hell was that? Please, please!
I don't know.
saw the headline. What's the story of that?
It was nothing. It was some Rand Paul staffer licked somebody's camera and told them that it was a closed event. It was dumb. I'm sure the guy got. I haven't.
It's just
It was
gross.
so
It's
dumb.
gross.
It was so dumb that that I didn't follow up on it, and it hasn't become a bigger story than it was. It was one of those 15-second Twitter stories that disappears. It was fun. It was good fun while it lasted, but
It was 3 articles on IJR, but
it was on Mashable for 2.5 seconds, and then it like dropped off a cliff. Hey, I mean, at least it's entertaining. It wasn't anything, and it wasn't anything terrible. It was just a average everyday camera lick. But again,
oh my gosh! Wait,
that's what
no,
we're talking about.
no. Ryan in the chat, our private chat, said BillClinton.org would have a totally different meaning, and I was thinking we were still on the licking of things.
oh no,
Oh gosh!
no. Oh
Why?
my gosh, that's just wrong.
And
I'm
then,
trying
and then
to
of
find.
course, Ryan adds to it BillClinton.org.
No.
It's real early in the show. Wow, Andy, I need to give you an award. You didn't start this. This was not you. This was the Mormon.
Yeah.
The Mormon was the one who started this mess. So congratulations.
I was unneeded. My skills were not needed.
So what do you guys think, though? I mean, that was something I really want to hear what you guys have to say about this whole Ted Cruz, Mark Halperin dust up.
I think that we're learning some lessons from Newt Gingrich. Because remember, everybody was talking back in the debates in 2012 about how he kept flipping the conversation, reframing the question, going right at the heart of the matter. We're not falling for these silly little tactics. And the media is really starting to look stupid, and I'm really glad about that.
It's really, yeah, and it's taking my breath away, as it is with many of you, with many of us, about how much better this field is than the last time around. I've been telling people, look, Mitt Romney took one look at this field and said, I'm not running. He knew. And by the way, we don't even have any really good quick comebacks from Rubio because he's been so smooth he hasn't had to. Okay, I mean, he hasn't. They haven't even been able to bait him. He's been so good, and all of them have been just so impressive. It's really been something to watch. Even Jeb Bush, who, let's face it, he's not my guy, but with his supposedly worst one was simply when he misunderstood a question, talking to what's her name on Fox News. I mean, this is a very impressive group. I love it. I'm very happy with it. I think the only time that they're struggling right now is with Iowa and the ethanol subsidies, and that's the only place where they're really struggling because that's a tough one. But it's great. It's wonderful. I love it. And by the way, while all this is going on, their candidate won't even speak, which is something. So I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, Hillary's gone like 20 days without answering any questions from reporters. And that's a great strategy for her because her numbers go down the more she talks and the more people learn about her. She's much more popular as an idea than a reality. So her strategy of just be a enigma that nobody ever hears from, totally the opposite of Obama's every topic everywhere. But it is quite stunning that she gets away with it. And it makes sense, though. There are so many candidates on our side, and it's going to be even worse, that the news media has, they're going to have 16 people to talk to on our side or the one person that everybody's known for 20 years, 30 years. So they're not going to. Hillary's old news. I mean, why even bother interviewing her? Because nobody really cares what she has to say. And they'll interview the GOP guys because, oh, maybe they'll screw up and say something stupid, or maybe they'll be entertaining, or we can try to trap them, or it's at least different and newsworthy, and there will be articles written about it that people will click on. Whereas nobody will click on an article about what Hillary said because Hillary never says anything. So I think we're in really good shape, but I hate saying that because I don't want to curse it, I don't want to jinx it.
But at this rate, we can still go through a heck of a lot of candidates and still have good people in the race.
Yes, and many of our really good candidates are probably going to be very boring speakers. I mean, I don't think that Scott Walker is all that dynamic on the stump. Bobby Jindal is wonderful, but has the ability to bore me to tears. And they all have the opportunity to screw up and mess up and make mistakes. And I think we're going to have to be as thrilled and enthusiastic when they say the right thing, and supportive and walk on by when they say the wrong thing. Rather than what we want to do, which is focus on, oh my God, my guy said something stupid, and let's just analyze the stupid things. Let's just walk past the stupid thing and focus on the good things that they're going to do, because there's going to be so many guys saying so many good things.
Leslie, you bring up kind of a really important point there. Not so much us defending our own guys, but one reason it's been so important for the Republican candidates to be so on message is because there are so many Republicans, Tea Partiers, Libertarians lying in the weeds, waiting to pounce on those who are not their candidates. And right. I mean just waiting, lathering, hoping, praying for anything they can jump on, and they're starving right now. It's been, over these last few weeks, they have been starving, and I'm loving it. Because I get a little sick of the division peddlers. I get a little tired of it.
And for right now, I think it's wonderful that conservatives have a megaphone and our message is getting out there, because there isn't any news from the left. There's nothing of interest going on the left. So everything that our guys on the right say, they're actually getting written about in high volume publications. So we're having an opportunity for our message to get out there in a way that it hasn't really gotten out there before, and I think that's a very good thing. We do have to sort of monitor our own. Earlier this week, I guess it was last weekend, Jeb Bush made a commencement speech at Liberty University, and Liberty University is a religious institution. So his commencement speech was about freedom of religion and the importance of religion in our lives, and he had some interesting things to say, and he was actually quite well spoken on the topic, which was a surprise. I mean, I haven't really paid attention to much of what Jeb Bush says at all about anything, and I read a short article about 9 important points from Jeb Bush's speech at Liberty University, and I shared it out, and it would have been awesome for us to talk about how great it is that conservatives are getting better at communicating the connection between religious freedom and free market principles and the American way, and bringing religion into the public sphere and owning it and acknowledging how your religion informs your public life and is a part of you, and being just generally more comfortable and able to communicate morality and the importance of Christianity and the history and heritage and the formation of the nation, etc. It's really nice to have people who can actually speak these things well and speak and get their message broadcast. And so it's important for us to say, oh, this guy who has a big megaphone said these things that are great, let's talk about this message. Well, instead it becomes about whether or not we want Jeb Bush to be our presidential candidate. And that's self-limiting, I think. And
you said Jeb Bush, we want Jeb Bush to be our presidential candidate. Go away. You're done. Done. Over.
Yeah.
Show's done. Pack it up.
We can't even talk about what the candidates are discussing without it being whether you support them for president or not. Who cares?
You can't have those words in the same sentence without being called a rhino. I mean, it's automatic.
And that's all that anybody wants to talk about is whether Jeb Bush should be my president or not. I don't care. People are listening to what Jeb Bush says, and he says some things that are interesting. Let's talk about that.
It's amazing, and I disagree with Jeb Bush on some things, immigration especially. But it's amazing how many people are saying flat out, if he's the candidate, I will vote Libertarian, I will not vote. There are those here in Denver who are saying they will campaign against him, helping Hillary win. And I had one
rattling. I just ignore that crap. I mean, that's just.
I had one person press me on air, basically not Chris, different show, but one person pressed me on air. Would I help in this endeavor? As if the test of my patriotism is if I will help Hillary Clinton be president if Jeb Bush is the other numerically viable candidate. It's incredible. And here's the big thing, Leslie. At a time when somebody is jumping on, here you're bringing up that, Jeb made a very nice speech, really good speech on very refreshing, well put. He's much more eloquent than his brother. He's still last in my list of candidates. I got him dead last, but he's much more eloquent than his brother. And what we're missing is the opportunity, and I want to put this to the group, to jump on what Hillary said about the Christian faith. What'd you guys think of that? And how basically we have to rethink our beliefs in light of,
I think one of the things that maybe we tackle this with is just asking the question, okay, so you're saying that Bush would be worse than Hillary. Articulate for me how. Tell me on that subject or this subject or the other subject in which way Hillary Clinton is closer to your views. And see if you can, find an opening there to poke holes in. I'm not saying that some people aren't really that passionate and really despise Jeb Bush and the whole idea of a Bush legacy presidency. Again, I understand where that comes from, but I think they've thrown practicality out the window, and I think if there's an audience there that you could ask those questions and either make them rethink it or at least make the audience realize how marginalizing that person is.
Well, and I think sometimes those statements are more emoting than thinking. I know they're more emoting than thinking, and I think sometimes it's just a need that people have to express something, and we do ourselves and them a disservice by even acknowledging what they say. Just, let them say it and just move on. Not every blurtation has to be responded to.
Well, I kind of didn't have a choice, but
Well, yeah, if it's the guy you're talking to on the radio, you could go, oh, sorry, we got disconnected.
And I basically just said, first and foremost, Jeb Bush has as much chance of getting the nomination as I do. Okay, he has no chance, none. I don't care about the money. He has zero chance. There's no groundswell for him in any sector of conservatism. He's not going to get the nomination. It's highly, highly unlikely, even with the money. But secondly, look, if there are two numerically viable candidates, that means if you campaign to draw votes from one of them, you are helping the other. I'm not saying a third-party vote equals a vote for Hillary. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you're campaigning to draw votes away because of how much you hate Jeb Bush, you're only going to be drawing those votes away from the right. You're not equally drawing votes away from the left, which means that you are helping Hillary. Okay, and I will not have my patriotism judged by whether or not I'm willing to help elect Hillary Clinton as the next president of the United States. And third, you got to just, at that point, you say, look, what matters most is not, I really appreciate the anger people have at the Bush family and a lot of the compromises and stuff. I appreciate a lot of that. I really do. I share some of it. But my anger cannot mean more than the future of this country and our children. What is better? To rail against Jeb Bush for being, for what is that school thing?
Common Core.
Or which I'm against him on. Okay, I don't want Washington governing this? Or can we look at the fact that Hillary Clinton hates all school choices for all Common Core, all union dominance, and Jeb Bush was a pioneer and is just an absolute crusader for school choice? Look, he is better than her on 95% of the issues. And he's the worst one on our side, in my view. That's how good our side is.
Yeah, and I think that we're missing, for those who hate a particular candidate and who are ranting and raving on social media all day long about how evil their hated candidate of choice is, I really think that they're missing a fantastic opportunity, because instead of just railing and ranting and raving and sounding crazy, because that's how people who are apolitical are going to look at you, why not use that energy to explain why you don't support a particular candidate and why you do support a different candidate? Lay out the facts, do some research, educate your friends, your family, your neighbors, your social media friends. That way they understand where you're coming from, instead of just saying Ted Cruz is awesome, Jeb Bush is horrible.
And Corey and I, we did have this conversation earlier in the week about what's sort of behind the noise here. There was a poll, apparently. Do you want to talk about that poll a little bit?
About that real quick. The other day I got out of work, I think it was Monday, and my Facebook feed was just blown up with all this chatter about this poll that had come out that supposedly 60% of Republicans were going to stay home and not vote if Jeb Bush was our nominee. And I mean, we're not talking just a few posts. We're talking probably 10 with paragraphs-long rants from some of my friends about how infuriated they would be and how they wouldn't go and vote if Jeb Bush was our candidate. And so I instant messaged Fishy and JD, and I was like, is this a type of clickbait or something? Because all it's doing is riling up the base and causing all kinds of division on our side. And I'm kind of wondering if this isn't a type of clickbait that maybe the left, or who knows, is putting out there just to cause division on our side.
I think it's possible, and what struck me is the type of people they're asking in polls are quote-unquote likely voters. The people who know the candidates, all the candidates' names, are people like us. The people who don't will recognize the name Bush, and they'll say, those polls that say Bush is the best chance against Hillary, it's because we're a year and a half out, and he's the only name that some of these people have heard. The other guys haven't had a chance to make their case yet. And so by continuing to react to whatever news you see out there about Jeb Bush, you're feeding that media machine that is keeping his name in front of the public, instead of giving your guys some air and some oxygen to express themselves. The people who are going to actually vote on whether Jeb Bush makes it as the presidential nominee for the Republicans or not, those people know who the field is. They're reacting to polls that are completely different sets of people voting in those polls, as though they were the polls for the primaries. And it's very confusing, and it looks to me like the whole thing is ginned up to continue to put Jeb's name out there and starve the other candidates of attention.
Well, I mean, look, Bush is going to pull in the top group until some people start dropping out and the conservative vote consolidates. And that's the way it is. He'll pull in the top group, and once some people drop out, he's done. He has no chance. There is no groundswell. But it's not just with Bush. Look at Graham is basically getting in for the sole purpose of railing against Rand Paul. I mean, it's crazy. Okay? This attacking. I love the diversity of our candidates. I think it's fantastic. I look at the other side and I see one little old lady, which is fine, by the way. I'm all for a little old lady if it's Margaret Thatcher. Okay, but the fact is that this one is awful. They've got one little old lady who's telling Christians they need to change their beliefs that are 2,100 years old, because she wants them to on an issue. And meanwhile, we've got this fantastic diversity of sharp, energetic, different viewpoints, candidates who are mutilating interviewers left and right, and we're attacking each other. It's crazy.
And what's interesting is I know that when you say diversity, you're talking about ideological diversity. You're talking about
Yes, I am. You let me just real quick. Yes, I
you're
am.
talking about their plans and ideas and the groups that they appeal to, and the fact that, yeah, they're all under the Republican umbrella, but they are all over the map on different issues. They are not in lockstep on really much of anything other than opposition to uh, the left. But they differ in the way they would go about implementing their opposition. They are the kind of diversity that we have, and I think it really behooves us for the rest of 2015 to, yeah, talk about the personalities, but to sidestep and avoid some of the personality attacks and issues, and maybe replace them with conversations about the topics and the issues, rather than having lengthy paragraph discussions about whether or not you'll campaign for Hillary just to avoid Bush, because that's just fantasizing about something that's never even going to happen, and it's not really a useful way for us to spend our time. I don't think we should instead be spending our time on acknowledging that Jeb Bush is a good speaker for freedom of religion, and freedom of religion is important, and we keep talking about the freedom of religion and how the religious communities have a responsibility to address the poor, because that was part of what he was saying, is that the conservative message about poverty and the conservative solution for poverty works through our church organizations and through our communities, and those types of solutions are more important for us to be talking about than to focus on the fact that it was Jeb Bush who said it. What's more important is what he said, and I think that's more beneficial to us as a conservative movement, because we've got all these fabulous ideas being brought up by all of this wonderful diverse group of candidates, and as long as we can kind of stay away from the personality discussion of, yes, this one is or is not my guy, because it's not time to make those decisions yet. It's time for us to say, oh, this guy is talking about civil asset forfeiture, which is something we're going to talk about later in this episode, and this guy is talking about addressing the needs of the poor through community organizations, and this presidential candidate is talking about labor laws and getting more people employed. Those are things that we should all be talking about, more so than talking about the individuals and whether we would vote for them or not. I think it'd be more of a good use of our time. And with the clumsy segue into the next thing we want to talk about, I kind of mentioned labor laws, and I know that was not really a good segue, but we kind of need to move on to our next topic, and that would be labor laws and James Franco. And who wants to start out with that one?
I'll take a crack at it if nobody else is. This is pretty epic, and it's sort of file it under the same category as Think Progress going after Mark Halperin. It's kind of the reverse of that. James Franco has followed in the footsteps kind of Ashton Kutcher, who I'm sure everybody remembers Ashton Kutcher's great speech at the Teen Choice Awards, talking about the importance of hard work and all of that good stuff. And
how sad is it that these crazy actors, who really are crazy and are total leftists, occasionally say something that's not insane, and it's so occasional that it's newsworthy. Because
well, I mean,
I don't saying something that's not insane is totally newsworthy. Carry on.
It is. I mean, it's. I don't know if he's completely insane. I don't really know too much about the guy. But yes, Ryan points out in our private chat that Ashton Kutcher has said multiple sane things. So yes, congratulations to Ashton Kutcher for on multiple occasions having said sane things and being one of the key investors behind Uber. So yeah, good stuff from Ashton Kutcher. But James Franco wrote a really awesome article in the Washington Post about his experience working at McDonald's, and not just his experience. This is him dropping out of college, trying to be an actor, and he couldn't get a job, essentially, because all of the established struggling actors had taken all of the good waiter jobs. So he needed a job to survive, and what he did was he found a job at McDonald's. He went to McDonald's. He came in. He did his interview, and boom, he was hired. And he was working the late night, and it was the perfect job for him. He, as a young guy, doing something that didn't take a whole lot of skill, it didn't take a whole lot of effort, and he made money. He made what he needed to make to get by as a struggling young actor, and harassed people at the takeout, what do you call it, intercom, with all sorts of fake voices and stuff, talking about, the way that he goes through it, and the way that he sort of highlights how important this stop was on his trip to being where he is now, and the importance of being able to survive and get by, and doing it on a job that was not terribly difficult, and that he was being paid probably more than he should have been paid, given the amount of work that he did, which was basically just standing around waiting for an order to take, making sure that the hamburgers were swapped out when their time was up on the line, and sometimes eating those burgers on their way out. I mean, it's an interesting look at somebody who actually did have to do some real work before getting to this job where he's making millions and millions of dollars, and making movies about killing the little douchebag in North Korea. It was, and the kind of reaction that the left sort of has given has been so outrageous. They've been, how dare he, talk about fast food jobs as if they weren't such, going against minimum wage. How could you say that they're overpaid, that fast food workers are overpaid? And he really has dispelled a lot of these things. If they had actually read the article instead of sort of just seeing that he was going against the grain on this and attacking him, just the way that he sets it up, talking about the kind of low impact job it was that made it easy for him to facilitate his actual career, I don't know, it makes a whole lot of sense.
And that's what the left eats their own, but the right, and I don't want it to be that, the James Franco discussion is something that conservatives have taken it over as an argument of our own, because it was not a political article at all. It was just an article about how it was helpful for him to have that hand up out there, and he walked in off the street with no experience at that organization, with no employment record, and somebody hired him who had no idea that he would even show up the next day or not steal from them that day. And both sides of that equation were given the opportunity to hire somebody at a low wage and give him and put him on that first step of the ladder.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to start a conversation about the minimum wage, because what this article was all about, first of all, James Franco's whole approach to the article was very upbeat and very positive. He was not derogatory at all throughout the whole entire article. And I've worked a minimum wage job before, and it was the same thing. It was right out of high school. I didn't have any work experience, but it gave me a chance to get my feet wet. It gave me the chance to show up at a job every day, to learn how to interact with customers, to learn how to operate a cash register. And it also gave me the chance to start building a resume. And that's ultimately what those jobs are for. That's what those jobs were designed to be, was a chance for young people to get their foot in the door so that they could start to build a resume, get some work experience, and begin their path in a more successful career. And I know Andy had something he had wanted to say just with regards of how we view those jobs these days.
Yeah, well, a couple things. First of all, the thing his article really tells me is that it should serve as a reminder to people that when you raise the minimum wage, you're cutting the lowest rungs off the ladder. Okay? You're hurting the people who can only reach the lowest rungs. And that's terrible. Secondly, I don't like looking down on those jobs. You know, this person said that they pitied the person who wrote about his article, and that's okay. It was a nice article still, but was saying he pitied the people who were in those jobs. I don't pity them. I admire them. I admire anybody who does a job. I think they're fantastic. Corey will tell you when I go to we go to Taco Bell a lot. That's my place. You know, I worship there, and when we go there, I treat these young people like gold. I love them. I think it's fantastic, you know, that they're there, they're working, and that they're getting their lives started, and I just think it's great. You know, my life turned around because of working a night janitor job over 30 years ago, and it changed my work ethic. I went into that job just totally with no direction in life. And by the way, no schooling was going to change that. No classes were going to change that. Nothing was going to change that except having to show up at a job where I was needed and where I had to perform. And that's what it was. And that's what these kids need. You know, they go through, they get these degrees and master's degrees and all this. I'm all for that. I think it's wonderful to get a degree, but I got to be honest. They come out, for the most part, no better able to perform. They also need to have the chance to go somewhere, be needed, and produce every day.
The heinous thing about this, too, is that by raising the minimum wage, you are raising, I mean, when you talk about cutting off the rungs of the ladder, let's look at what that looks like. You are actually giving employers the ability to require more for entry-level jobs, way more than your average person will have. Where we know Prue from our regular chat room, Prue has talked about how people are now asking, where she's been looking for work, for a college degree, a 4-year degree, to work administrative assistant job. That is because they have the option to do so because of higher wages, because if you're going to pay to get somebody and you're going to be mandated to pay $15 an hour, you are going to take someone with far more education or qualifications or something than someone who's never worked before. It's a horrible thing, and it does allow employers, out of not just necessity but being forced to do that, so that they are not limited, they're not spending all of their days going through applications and looking at people and trying to make those decisions. They just cut the number of people they have to deal with by requiring a higher skill level or education level at the beginning. There are people for whom that becomes unreachable immediately.
So I want to go at this from a little different angle. I've worked pretty much my whole life in fast food restaurant business, worked for minimum wage, worked my way up, seen a lot of other people. You know, as conservatives, we like to support the individual. We like to support people working hard, doing things on their own, working their way up. If you show up to a minimum wage job, if you show up on time for a full week and you work fairly hard while you're there, you won't be at minimum wage by the end of the week. If you show up on time at a fast food place or somewhere like that every day for a month, you're probably going to be the manager there. I mean, if you just show up on time and do something while you're there at a minimum wage establishment, you're going to move up really, really quickly.
Well, and I don't know about, as quick as that, but I'll tell you, I started.
What do you do?
I started back in the 80s at a $3.35 an hour job, and they raised the minimum wage during that time, and I didn't get the wage. I was training people after having been there 2 years, training people who were making the same thing that I was, and people who were far older. It was very interesting the way that bump in the minimum wage took away any of the practical perks of my seniority. I had the responsibility to train people, but I wasn't making anything extra because the company couldn't afford to do that because the minimum wage had been bumped.
Yeah, another thing, the minimum wage is always zero. No matter what you put the technical minimum wage at, it's zero. If you make it high enough, the companies can't afford it. They'll just go out of business and you lose your job and you're making zero. And we're seeing that in Seattle right now.
Well,
Tons
yeah.
of restaurants are closing their doors because they can't afford the $15 minimum wage.
But back when a minimum wage was widely recognized as, or widely understood to be the starting point for an inexperienced person who's never worked anywhere before in their entire life, the absolute bare minimum, and there were still exceptions where employers could hire you at less than that if you were working a low number of hours. My first job when I was 16 was at a department store, but as soon as there was an opening at the vet's office, I got a job at the vet's office making less than minimum wage, but because I wanted to be pre-vet in college, I needed to work at a vet's office in high school to see if that was what I wanted to do. So it was basically kind of a paid apprenticeship, but it was great for me to see what goes on at a vet's office and to get some experience with that, and for the doctor's office, who didn't know me from Adam, didn't know if I would be any good or not, and they were able to hire me for 2 hours a day, 3 days a week at a very low wage, so they didn't have to take a big budgetary hit. They didn't take a big risk in hiring me. I wasn't going to be very expensive to them if I didn't work out. So they were able to say, yeah, come in and clean cages for us after school. And I did that, and then I stayed and I wanted to learn everything, and I started making more money and all of that kind of stuff. But because minimum wage was so low at that point, I was able to get that job. But I would not be able to get that job now because the vet clinic, since they have to pay 7.25 an hour, they need to hire somebody who's worth 7.25 an hour. I wasn't worth 7.25 an hour when they first hired me because I had to be taught how to clean a dog cage, and I had to be taught where the leashes were and how to walk a dog. So I took up a lot of people's time with the training and stuff like that. So I was only worth $3 an hour for the first couple of weeks. But now, with a higher minimum wage, they can only hire somebody who they believe they can get more than $7.25 an hour out of. So that means they're not going to hire a high school kid who has never worked at a vet's office before. They're not going to hire somebody who doesn't already know what they're doing. So how do you get that first step in the door? Nobody's going to hire you because they can only, since they have to pay such a high rate, they're only going to hire people who have experience. But you can't get the experience. So how do you ever get that first step on the rung with minimum wage even being as, quote, low as 7.25?
Well, the answer, Leslie, is you don't. Look at the labor participation rate overall, which is the lowest in 35 years, and then look at it for teenagers.
Right, and when you drive up to a fast food restaurant, do you see any high school kids working there?
Not as many.
It's mostly people in their early 20s.
Yeah, and by the way, and this is something I always ask people, you say you want a living wage and you want it to be a higher wage. Let me ask you this. When you jack that up across the board, and so everybody's making it everywhere you go to buy things, grocery store, gas station, 7-Eleven, McDonald's, and so forth. Now, what just happened to how high the living wage needs to be? Everything costs more. You've made everything everywhere more expensive because you drove up labor costs everywhere. So now you have to drive up labor costs more, which cuts off another bottom rung in the ladder. Now they're going to hire fewer people, but they still have to charge more for their products because you've driven up their wages so much. So now we got to drive it up more, which will cut off more rungs in the bottom of the ladder. Look, we're at a 35-year low in labor participation rate. Stop it. I want people to get started in life. You can't get started if they put have you ever seen imagine a race, a 100-yard dash with a big wall at the beginning? That's what they've set up.
Look, if
So wait, it's a Tough Mudder competition?
those are fun. So if $15 an hour is good, why are we stopping there? Who arbitrarily decided that's the magic number?
Actually,
You
Caleb
can't-
Bond did a video on that. He went to a college campus and got kids to sign on to a $75 per hour minimum wage rate hike.
Yeah, I mean 15 you can't live comfortably. If we're gonna arbitrarily decide a number, let's make it 75. Why not 150? Let's
Yeah.
make it $1 million an hour and make everyone millionaires. Then everyone lives in mansions, and at some point people realize how ridiculous that sounds. So why is 15 that magic number right now?
DuckTales actually did a cartoon about that too, about inflation. It was awesome.
Really? DuckTales had a cartoon?
I'll send it to you.
It was the only purely Republican Disney thing I've ever seen in my life.
DuckTales, the entire show, or just that episode?
That episode.
Just that episode.
Okay, so we need to put this in this. All right, this goes right into the FRN content database project.
All
So
right.
we have it. We have it there. The YouTube video. Pass it around for all of you parents out there. This episode of DuckTales. It'll be in the. I'm sure it'll be in the description somewhere. Once we get the link.
Amazing. This whole business about the minimum wage issue has been really hot. There's been a lot of activity and agitation on it. But it's not the only issue that we're going to see in terms of labor issues. There's a new piece that came out in the Washington Post that says the next labor fight is going to be over when you work, your shift workers, regulating how shift work is going to be able to be applied. And I don't want to get too much in the weeds to this, but the theory is that you have your schedules worked on by the company because they have the more complete picture of when demand is high and when they need more staff and when it's low and they don't need a whole bunch. Like grocery stores, they stock up full in the morning. In the evening, not so much. Fast food, you're hitting your lunch and your dinner rushes, and the shifts are sort of built around that. And now there's going to be a movement, apparently, on regulating what kind of shifts employers can give, for how long, how many shifts, trying to make up, I guess, for the fact that the whole Obamacare business has driven up the number of part-time workers and people who have to work shift work now, rather than full-time employment, because businesses are not able to carry the expense of health care anymore. So that's going to be something to watch for us, how they're going to try to regulate shifts. Now, there's some businesses that abuse the privilege, I'm sure, of scheduling, changing schedules as people go in to work, find out they're not working because the schedule was changed, things like that. Those are horrible things, but I think almost all of that could be solved outside of government regulation rather than making this one more way for the government to attack businesses.
I think a lot of this, and both the minimum wage argument as well as now the hours that you work arguments, fall under the trouble that we get into when we accept that initial but small violation of principle. We accepted the initial but small violation of principle by saying, okay, we will allow a federal minimum wage of $5 an hour. That's reasonable, and it's okay. Well, no, the principle itself is unreasonable. The federal government has no business dictating what businesses do. But because we allowed it, the camel's nose is under the tent. And now for progressives to add on dictating the specific shift hours dictating the specific shifts you work. We allowed them to dictate you can only work 40 hours a week. We allowed the federal government to have a say in that, rather than allowing at the turn of the century where the turn of the last century, factories were on the basis of a more educated populace and competitive pressures between the different companies. The work week was on its own shortening, and labor conditions were on their own improving. We didn't have to have the federal government involved. But because we allowed it, because we allowed that violation of our principles, we've already agreed what type of woman you are. Now we're just negotiating the price.
That camel's nose and head and neck and the front half of itself is all under the tent.
Exactly. And now by what right do we push it back out of the tent? But we have to, because we're falling apart, and we have to begin to push back and say, it's none of your business. Federal government, it's none of your business what I pay my workers. It's none of your business when I put them to work. It's none of your business when I need 5 employees versus when I need 3. Back the hell off.
And wouldn't it be very easy to build a site that says, you know, jobchecker.com or something like that, where somebody can post what goes on at their company anonymously in terms of the labor policy, the shift work policy, and tell people. That's an opportunity for people to use the power of social media to wrap some heads and some knuckles maybe on poor labor practices, rather than needing to drag the government into it.
Absolutely. We already have that. Google tried, there was something that Google was going to do, and the word got out, and within a week they backed off on the idea because it was a stupid idea, and the public got up in arms and said, no, that's a stupid idea, and they backed off before anybody even had the opportunity to get in touch with their congressman, and before any congressman had the opportunity to get in touch with any lobbyist to write any legislation. The army of Davids that we have out here with social media, Facebook, Indeed.com, Glassdoor.com, all of that kind of stuff is far superior to any federal regulation.
Okay, but wait a minute now. Hillary's advocate here, devil's advocate.
Hillary's advocate, I love it. Took me a second.
Hillary's advocate here. Just think politically, though. Everybody has had abusive bosses. Everybody has had abusive, power-mongering leads and supervisors who got their first promotion and let it go to their head.
Oh, I've got an abusive boss right now. I work for my sister.
Well, there you go. I know most people don't have it that bad. Okay. But
my older sister.
But here's the thing, folks. When you say the free market will fix it, that doesn't sell.
I know. How do we message that?
Look, I message it in this way. It is good to have labor laws. It is, because I believe that the government's role is not to be a provider of goods and services, but a referee, that the game is played fairly. I'm not going to say, let's let the free market decide and come down on people when they sexually harass employees. I want there to be a law against sexually harassing employees, or labor laws and so forth. Here's the thing. Those laws have to, beyond the dignity and rights of the individual, those laws have to not interfere with the business market. And I understand that that is a balancing act. I get it. But once again, when there is abuse in the system, like sexual harassment, I do want laws against it. And do I think it's wrong to have somebody come to work and just see their schedule was changed? Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, in fact, I actually worked retail for a few years, and I had a boss that was trying to fire me. And she would change the schedule without telling me. And I had to start checking the schedule every single day to make sure I knew when I was supposed to be in, because she would just change it. She was trying to trip me up so I would miss a shift, and then she'd be able to get rid of me.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm going to say this right out. Just my experience now over the years. The strong majority of abusive managers and supervisors, this is going to sound so mean, they were Democrats. The strong majority were liberals. Liberals are very abusive in the workplace in general, okay? And there are some wonderful liberals in the workplace who are not abusive at all. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying the lion's share, and I knew some bad Republicans in business too, okay? But the lion's share were liberals. You need some protections to protect you from the liberals. I don't know how else to put it. We can't just say no government laissez-faire on this, because politically they're going to look at you, the voter is, and going to say, you just took away my only protector. No, no, no. I don't want to hear that the free market is going to sort it all out. I want to know that if somebody treats me in ways, yes, let's put the business first. Yes, we can't just mandate they've got to do 8 to 10-hour shifts. But if they're abusive, I want laws that say you can't do that. When I report them, I'm reporting them to somebody for something.
So, well, the liberal argument of having requirements about the number of shifts and the timing of shifts and having a federal law for consistency and predictability, that's then a valid argument, because that's just going to be protecting you from the unscrupulous employer.
It's not a valid argument because number one, it's not responding to the marketplace. It's overrunning it. And number two.
Yeah, but the free market is dangerous. You just said you needed protection against the free market.
And number two, it is not preventing abuse. It's dictating terms to business. You see,
it is abusive to some employees who have to work shifts that they don't like. That's abusive. I mean, that's microaggression and stuff.
Not abusive. No. That's not sexual harassment, and that's not telling people you're on call all the time, and I'll never tell you if you actually have the shift.
Excuse me. What if I'm a chronosexual?
What?
I'm attracted to certain times of the day. So if you
okay. I thought you were like having a fetish for clocks or something. Didn't really understand.
Actually, JD, you dropped out. Did you say you're attractive several times a day, various times? I'm sorry that you're limited in that way, but let us know when, and we'll make sure to hold the show then.
Like you said. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Ratings, baby, ratings.
Ratings, absolutely.
Now, look, I'm not saying that you're just meaningless fluff and eye candy. I'm not saying you're more than that to us.
So you're not saying that.
I'm not saying that.
Listen, I understand that I am here mostly for my looks. Man, now I'm totally off of what I was going to say. I was going to try and transition to civil asset forfeiture. That's what I was trying to do. I was trying to get in there somewhere.
Where's the train wreck sound effect?
I don't think there is one, Leslie. We need to. Yeah.
I
need to buy the new.
My voice is the train wreck sound effect.
It's the derailing. That was awesome, though.
Fishy, save us, would you please?
Yes, I think I shall. Okay, so last week we've had a little bit of a good response from folks who were introduced to the concept of conservative small talk. And I just want to run through it again really quickly and think this is the way that we'll do it on the show before we close. I mean, we've got a good little chunk of time set aside here to do this. But instead of role-playing the way that we did last week, which was illustrative of helping people start the conversations, what we're going to do is each of the folks on this show have a different topic, a different scenario to tell about, and they're going to outline sort of the facts that are really powerful and have the potential to grab listeners easily, and they'll run down the story for you, and then we'll let them talk really briefly about good ways to open the conversation. Those are the ideas that we've started with. The first step was always identify some subject that was broad enough beyond just the conservative circles, but has broad appeal that we can use to attract more people to listening to views that they might not have heard, and to prepare the ground. So picking a subject, doing a little research, which everybody has done, making sure that you are familiar with the facts of the case, and then being able to open a conversation about it. Then after that, you can gauge from your reaction where you go from there, but we would just want to concentrate on the first half of that process now. And so this is a very broad and very widely appealing subject, asset forfeiture. It's coming up more and more in the news. More people are becoming aware of it, and we can be a part of the process of educating folks. So I'm not sure who's going first.
We can go first if you like.
Great. So Corey and Andy are going to tackle the first story in asset forfeiture.
Sure, and one thing I just wanted to bring up, something I've been doing on Facebook quite a bit, is that as I find stories like these, I make a comment along the lines of, wow, okay, so I guess the police don't have enough real crimes to investigate, that we're seizing assets from this rural farm in Nebraska, you know, whatever the story happens to be. The one that I had read was a story about a young man who was traveling across the country, and he was only 22, and the article said that he had fallen victim to a legal form of government highway robbery. And so what had happened was he was on his way, and he was taking Amtrak, and when he changed trains in Albuquerque, he had $16,000 in cash on hand. And so, you know, somehow the agents with the DEA got on the train and started looking for people who might be trafficking drugs. And so this young man, his last name is Rivers, he said that the agents questioned passengers randomly, asking for their destination, reason for travel, and then when he got to him, he was the only black person in the car, but the agent decided to search his bags as well. So Rivers was trying to cooperate, and he allowed them to, and the agent found the $16,000 in his bank envelope, and they just took it. And so he was begging them not to take it. He even got his mom on the phone to verify his story of where the money had come from, and it didn't matter. And what really bothered me about this story was that it said that these agencies actually get a piece of whatever the asset is that they seize. So if it's cash, they get to keep a portion of it for their department. So in thinking about ways that we could talk about articles like this in situations, I was just thinking about the fact that, you know, how terrible to create that type of an incentive for dishonest behavior in our law enforcement agencies. You know, if you get a kickback of whatever you seize, are you going to be checking a lot more for things that you could take? And so what I was thinking is this could be a good way to start a conversation about loser pays, because these victims are having to hire attorneys and go to court to sue the counties or the agencies in order to get their property back. So let's say that $2,500 of your money is taken, and you have to pay $1,200 in legal fees in order to get it back. I was just thinking, you know, this would be a great way to talk about our justice system and how if the judge finds that the agency took your property or your money unlawfully, that they should not only have to return the money completely, they should also have to pay interest on it, and they should have to reimburse you for any legal fees that you had to incur in order to get your property back. And so I think that if you were to approach that with people, you know, talking about, look, this is a victim, this is government being a bully, it's going to really grab people's attention and get them to begin a dialogue with you about that.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be great if the cops, who, by the way, I love the cops, I'm not into this whole, you know, but wouldn't it be great if they had to take some risk if they were going to take your money? I would think so, because then they would virtually never take your money. Just a thought.
Well, I hope it's not just virtually. I hope that they just don't take your money in real life too. It's
well,
like,
you know,
that's insane.
Look, why are we even allowing them to do this without accusing you of a crime? Period.
Because we wanted to fight the drug cartels in the 80s, and we didn't have laws that could do that at the time. So we decided that we would work on it through this civil forfeiture thing, and it was meant to take millions of dollars. It was meant to cripple cartels, but now it's used to take, you know, $60,000 from veterans because their car smelled a little bit like pot.
Say what?
Yeah. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we want to if we want to start going into my story.
Well, I know that you were involved in a lot of these seizures. You never actually took any money.
No. I was only there for spite. Personally, I was.
Drugs. I just figured you were.
No, there were no drugs.
Wanted the weed.
No, there were no drugs. Seriously, there were no drugs. That no drugs involved.
I know that. I was picking on you.
Oh well.
You're so libertarian. I just figured, That's
Clearly,
that's why you can't be a cop, and you certainly would not be allowed to be a drug sniffing dog. I just don't think it would be. A libertarian drug sniffing dog would just be, it's just wrong.
Libertarian drug sniffing dog is the name of my new ska funk band.
Okay.
Anyway, so I don't know if this is as bad as your story, Andy and Corey, because I mean yours actually has this element of racial profiling that sounds really, really bad. I don't know if that's actually the case, whatever, but it just sounds so bad. It sounds so ugly and so disgusting. But in my story, we have a guy who is a decorated Air Force veteran, who was, driving from the Midwest to California, and he had $63,000 in shopping bags in the back of his car. He got stopped for crossing traffic lanes without signaling. So there you go. If he hadn't, that's his crime. To me, crossing traffic lanes without signaling, that's pretty much a $63,000 fine. I mean, in usual situations, wouldn't you say? So he was on his way to visit his uncle in Los Angeles, and he was planning on using the $63,000 for a down payment for a house. The cops pulled him over. Apparently, the car smelled a little bit of marijuana, and the officer obtained consent to search the car, and there was no pot. There were no drugs. There were no drugs in the car, but there was $63,000 in some grocery bags and some pot memorabilia, like they're like books or something like that, which last time I checked is not against the law. And that, just for that, I mean, they took the $63,000. This is a guy who is a veteran who fought for our country, and because he had how to make wicked hash and how to make weed oil without blowing yourself up. 2 articles. That's it. He had 2 articles in his car.
Well,
And
did they seize it and put the cash in evidence while they charged him with a crime, or
no
did they
crime.
just take his money, never give it back, and it's just gone?
They took the money, and there were some procedural situations that were going on. They couldn't find his address, allegedly, to send him the information to claim the money, or he gave them the wrong address, or they couldn't, somehow their lines were all crossed, and eventually it came out that he didn't get his money back.
JD, I mean, in general, that sounds like somewhat of an oversight, obviously. But in general, do they have like a limit, a quick time limit on how quickly they've got to? They're holding your money.
No,
there's no time limit on how long
there's no time limit. It was that's the thing. That's the thing that's so insane about this, is because it was designed to combat the cartels and has been used. I mean, the only way you can say it is unconstitutionally.
So these are federal laws, not
yes.
state or local. And they're
it's a hodgepodge of all of the above.
There was a precedent set federally about the civil asset forfeiture that has been used, that precedent has been used down the line.
Okay, so is this, I'm just trying to figure out, as far as a heinous wrong that must be righted, do we target it at the local level first and try to correct it in jurisdictions and then counties and states? Or should we target that from a Washington, D.C. level? I mean, where's the resistance going to be least?
Yes and yes. Yes, a pincer movement that hits both. We need our federal elected officials to be on and aware of and on this issue. And some of our candidates are, some of our legislators are. But when we're looking at state issues, state by state, a state can limit the state entities from doing these things as well. Susana Martinez just did it. There's a bill in front of the Texas legislature about it. So both need to happen simultaneously. And the way that we contribute to this is trumpeting stories like this so that we can build the popular support so that we can do that.
But the opposition that we're going to get is that this is a revenue source that we're that we're harming.
No, no. The opposition that we're going to get is, of course, they're guilty. That's what's
his car
happen.
smelled like pot. Of course, it was drug money. The kid, this was a black kid with 16 grand. Where's a black kid going to get 16 grand? Of course, he was selling drugs.
And this is what's so heinous about it, because when we're looking at the issues, we're not anymore talking about due process. We're talking about suspicion, we're talking about profiling, and we're talking about a complete lack of due process, because in these stories, the person is not considered the one who has been involved in the crime. It's the assets.
Yeah. And that's what's so insane about this, is that it is in complete
and it's guilty
violation.
before being proven innocent. I mean, it's guilty first.
That's what I was going to say. So that could be a good way to turn the conversation when you're talking to somebody is, well, how do you feel about the fact that if you're carrying a large sum of cash, you could be considered guilty until proven innocent? You're not even given a chance to prove where your money came from. How do you feel about that?
How does this issue break down in the liberal conservative sphere? I mean, are liberals in favor of this kind of thing? I would think that libertarians are opposed to it, and some conservatives who are small government. But what's the lefty liberal progressive?
I think Ryan could answer that with his story.
I don't know about the liberal progressive versus conservative on my story.
Look at that link that you're about to share.
Well, yeah, it's from Vox.com. Theirs was a lot shorter and less descriptive than the other one. But yeah, they wrote about it. There was a man who had $107,000 taken from him from the IRS. He had worked for 13 years in a convenience store. He had owned it. And there's a law on the books that if you make a cash deposit of over $10,000, the bank or credit union has to report it to the IRS. He had made his deposits at under $10,000, not right under, but not like 999, like nothing like that. But he had been doing the same thing for 10, 15, 13 years that he was in business, over 10 years, and he hadn't really changed, but he would save up for a week or whatever and then deposit it. The article points out that it's a valid, a lot of insurance companies will insure up to $10,000, so a lot of companies will get to $9,000 or so and then make that deposit. So since the government said, well, he's purposefully trying to dodge our $10,000 limit, he must be hiding something or doing something illegal, and they just took the whole $107,000 that he had saved for 13 years for.
And the reason that I wanted you to mention that was a Vox story, Corey made sure that I made this point. When we are talking about broad issues that appeal broadly, if we come at some people with a Fox News link on a story, sometimes people have a wall built up and a block there that they will not listen to anything that comes out of Fox News or other sources. If you brought a Limbaugh story, a Limbaugh write-up, or a Limbaugh audio segment, you couldn't get to them with that issue. But when we recognize that liberal outlets such as Huffington Post and Vox are putting those stories out, that tells you two things. It tells you, number one, that the left is somewhat, if not as concerned about these issues as we are. Might be different motivations, but that there is a broad, really broad, across the spectrum issue that we can tackle and seed our perspective into it. But it also says that those liberal sites are feeding that information too, and we don't need to be left behind on an issue of, say, asset forfeiture because the left is the only ones talking about it. So we can use that as a signal to tell us that this is a very broad issue, but we can also use that as a source that might get around somebody's objections to other traditional right-wing or right-slanted sites that we might see. It's very important, too, because when you're talking something as personal as asset forfeiture, that never happens to a group of people. It's one person, one family, one entity at a time. So the stories are all very personal and very heart-wrenching. People's life savings confiscated because a government entity suspected them of something that they could not prove, did not want to go through the bother of proving those things, but wants the assets anyway because there's a bounty. There's a reward for them based on that. The incentives are horrible. The government at any level looks horrible for doing it, and it's a great way to argue things like discrimination by the government, profiling by the government on things like this, talking about criminal justice reform, talking about just plain fundamental due process and fairness. People who might not understand what due process means in general will definitely get this story. It's an ability to open up conversations on a wide range of issues. And that's why I am so passionate about this issue in all these stories that I found, because I want people on our side to be able to take these heart-wrenching stories, learn how to practice talking about them, reaching more people, because honestly, I don't care who's in power. I need this gone. And I need as many people on this issue as possible making this no longer a policy. So I'm willing to take everybody on my train that I can get on this issue, and that's the way I think we should approach most of these.
And another thing that I just want to briefly touch on from the sort of liberal news outlet side of things, specifically for civil asset forfeiture, is that this one also has kind of an additional angle to it, because one of John Oliver, I can't think of what his new show's name is because I don't watch it generally. I see the clips on the internet. He actually did a really, really great expose about civil asset forfeiture, and a lot of people watched it. It's got tons and tons of views on YouTube, and so it's out there. It's in the zeitgeist. It's something that people know about. So that's an additional thing that you can think about when you are going to address somebody, that you could say, hey, I heard about this from John Oliver. It was something that was my jumping off point. I heard about it on John Oliver, and it was really, really, it's insane what's going on, that these parents have lost their house because their son was selling drugs out of the garage. That doesn't seem at all reasonable that the police would be able to seize somebody's freaking house because their son was doing something illegal there. That's a way that you can get into these conversations.
And when we talk about this on the conservative side, we also have to deal with that objection that we'll get from people. Well, of course, so-and-so was guilty. Either you believe in due process or you don't. You can have all your suspicions you want, but you had better be the person who's arguing for due process all the way down the line, regardless of whether a few people go free that were guilty, because this sort of thing is so approachable and so resonant because it could happen to you.
Yeah, if you're going to be all principles all the time, then please whip out your pocket constitution and take a little look at what is that in the Bill of Rights, Fourth Amendment? number 4, the one that says illegal search and seizure, that whole seizure part. They're not talking about uncontrollably flailing around. They're talking about when the cops come and take your stuff, and that's not cool, not legal, not something that we allow. So if you're going to try and argue on principle, the principle is that this is BS. This is not something that we should be allowing, not something that we should be turning a blind eye to because, oh, hey, it's the cops and the cops are always right. Not the case.
When you're looking at sites, at liberal sites like this, like Vox or Think Progress or Huffington Post, Media Matters, they're not there as news sites. Their sole purpose is to support the left, to support their candidates, to support their causes. Many of them were funded by and started by Hillary Clinton, George Soros, people like that. Their job is to push an agenda. So when you see them pushing something like this, talking about how bad big government's doing, there's a huge problem. We mentioned earlier that Think Progress was kind of supporting Ted Cruz. Hillary Clinton founded Think Progress, still is behind the scenes in charge of that. Whoever is supporting her opponent is going to get fired for that. So them coming out and doing that is a huge deal. And it's something that we should celebrate, we should share, and we should help because, they're going against what they were founded on. They're going against their purpose, their beliefs, to come out and tell the truth about something. So we need to try to support them when they do that type of thing.
I think a real key is if we can have a quick line that, make it a mantra that you can draw from something like this that applies to all conservatism. Something like, just keep government hands off your stuff. Okay, government's too powerful to allow them to decide when to grab your stuff. It's that simple. Oh, really? Let's take a look at what about the EPA grabbing lands? What about, see what I mean? If you get the hook in, if you get the conservative camel's nose under the tent on this, and Ryan, you're so right. When we can actually use their own stuff, when they're trying to use it to only advance their candidates, but we can put our camel's nose under the edge of the tent, we can really open it up and take advantage. Keep government's hands off your stuff. Off your internet, off your stuff, everywhere.
Off my cell phone, out of everything.
Love it. Love it. Well, okay, it's getting time to close the show, but I have to do this because it was a fun little thing I stumbled across. Matthew DeSormo had tweeted this, and I caught it. Sinistus Prime, and it is a site called TweetQ. Okay, TweetQ tells whether you are. I guess the rating would be how close to a feminist you are, how much more feminist you are than, say, someone else, based on the gender of people that you retweet. And so I thought we should check ourselves. And so went down the list here, and I think we're going to start with the party of choice. You are 0.4. That is a horrible score. You retweet, how many does it say, JD?
So a low score means that they are less feminist?
Yes.
They're more of part of that whole macho establishment, heteronormative, oppressive.
Corey hates women.
Actually, I was just going to say pretty much all I retweet is Free Radical Network, so what's that mean?
That's a good question. Next up, we have Ryan. How feminist is Ryan? Let's see.
Is it there? Is it showing for you guys?
Nope.
Don't see it.
It's showing for me. I'm seeing it right here. I just changed it.
Huh.
Okay, it looks like I have to do it manually each time.
I'm sorry.
No,
Well,
I'm
that's
sorry
weird.
about
The
it.
screen share thing should work better than that.
Yeah,
Right?
there we go. There's
Isn't
Ryan.
isn't this kind of like metadata?
Is it showing Ryan's for you?
It's
No,
showing.
it's the party of choice.
Crud.
Oh, this is
Uh,
just sad.
All right, let me try it again. Let me end the screen share and then. Sorry about this. I don't know why it's being so dumb.
Pilot error. Pilot error.
Okay, I think I know what has to.
We can always blame Google.
Well, yeah.
Yes.
That's,
And we will, and we shall, and we do. We blame Google, even though it's probably JD's fault. But
It's not my fault.
JD is blameless.
Is it showing it now?
I can't believe you actually analyzed our Twitter behavior. Don't you know that we don't do Twitter?
It's still showing the wrong thing, huh?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I was so
All right,
excited.
I'm going to the gallery. Let's see if this works. Oh my goodness.
Come on, I have to know how sexist Ryan is.
Yeah, really, right?
I fully believe that Ryan is totally sexist. He lives in Utah. You know, that's just sort of the sexist place and he's Mormon and stuff. So.
How about now?
Here we
Is it
go.
showing it?
Ryan is 0.8.
So
Yes.
he's less sexist than Corey and Andy?
Yes.
Nuh-uh.
Okay, we gotta work on this, Andy.
Okay, it kind of blanked out though now, JD. I'm just looking at a blank screen.
Yeah,
So-
I know. I have to go through each and every one of these manually.
It flashed on there really.
That's okay. The next one we have is Rat, Rodent Politics, George Templeton, who's been on our show before.
Uh-huh.
Coming up now.
Oh, I predict he's very sexist.
He's got to be sexist because he retweets a lot of sports stuff.
All right, can you see it?
Oh. No, I see you.
You see me? How can you see me?
Oh, I see like the top half of your picture.
Yes.
How is that even a thing?
It's a good question.
Well, and since it's cut off his eyes right there, it's kind of scary. What's he looking at?
Right?
Oh my goodness, this is like ridiculous. I feel so. This is so annoying because.
We'll fix it in post.
Yeah, right.
That might be the right idea. Okay, guys, you're imagining seeing.
Yes. Let's go through and I'll see if I can read them, and then you could put them up in post. The next one after Rats. Let me go scrolling through my feed
I
here.
think it's me.
It's you.
Okay, let me see. One second, because this is too.
Oh, sure, he's going to figure it out for himself. Ego problem
this
there.
Is important information.
Okay, we need a tweeto to figure out what of an egotist you are.
All right, let's see here if we can do this. Screen share.
He does like his own tweets.
Well, I favorite my own tweets.
Yeah, I don't understand the purpose of favoriting tweets.
Okay, I'm
Bookmark.
opening.
If you've ever tried to go back through a feed of 40,000 tweets, it's a good bookmark.
Yes, it is. All right, let's try this instead. All right, there we go. I think we have it. Do we have it?
No, it's a black screen. Oh, wait, there it is.
You have it?
You tweet all the ladies winner. Oh, JD, really?
Yes, JD's score, if I'm not mistaken.
No, it's all the ladies. It's all the ladies. I'm pretty sure. That's the real one, and totally not something that I made in GIMP to change the.
I see. Yeah, JD's score is 3. You can see this because his nice little pointer down there is bad. Going on from JD.
So JD is
So
3.
me-
What's the maximum score? Is it 1 to 10 or something?
10. 10 is you're really, really good at this stuff. I am a 4.8. So only half sexist.
Well, that makes you balanced, right?
Can
Well-
you see that?
Yeah, I can see that now.
Okay. I think we finally have the method.
Yes. Okay. So I'm 4.8. Now next is Leslie.
I don't even use Twitter much.
And this is why this is so amazing.
Oh
Because-
yeah. How does that happen?
Leslie is
Hacks.
I really don't even retweet people. Did they go back years? I mean, I probably retweeted 3 people. Yeah, I probably retweet you, though.
There you go.
Right.
There's Leslie.
So Leslie is
Nuh-uh.
a
Nuh-uh.
5.
Really?
Yes, Leslie is 5. In the comment, don't give up. We detect a certain lack of balance. Maybe all that's missing are tips on more interesting females to follow. Mm-hmm.
Or if I gave a crap about shoes and clothes and Khloe Kardashian and all that stuff.
Right.
Khloe
I think
Kardashians, right?
I
know
think we
enough
did.
about them. Toss the name out.
I think we did Pradeep also. Pradeep's
Yes,
been on
we
the
did.
show.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
One
So,
second. Sorry,
oops.
I had the.
And he retweets like crazy. He's super tweeter guy.
Yes, Pradeep is a good.
He's a super twit.
Good measure.
Wait, that may not mean what I think it means.
I love how this is alternately looking like I'm, in some deep concentration, and then it switches to
Hey.
MS Paint.
You told me to hold the camera on you.
I know.
Oh, you're
I know.
kidding
damn.
me.
1.4.
Misogynist. Ooh.
Yes, we have totally outed Shankar.
Ooh.
Oh, but it gets worse.
Misogynist. We're going to have to tell Dr. Mrs. Dr. Shankar on him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
But then again, if he was retweeting a whole bunch of the ladies, maybe that would mean we needed to tell Dr. Mrs. Dr. Shankar.
So you've got him either way, is essentially what you're saying.
Well, yeah, I mean, because he's always going to be in trouble. He understands that.
Mm-hmm. So the next one is Brass, who's been on the show before. This is going to be funny. Brass, big fat hero.
Goose egg.
Ouch, this might be bad. The retweets are far from equal. The account owner should promptly try to find way more female bliss.
Brass. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Am I reading that correctly? Is that saying that he's only retweeted 3 people? Is that what they're saying? That it's what's going on here?
I have no idea what those numbers mean. I don't care. I'm looking at the big fat goose egg and I'm having fun with it.
That is your prerogative. I think that's this one.
Oh, now thank you, Bobby Brown.
It was a real feather in your cap that you found this. They're fishy. No.
Okay, so when we were looking at ourselves and making sure we checked ourselves before we wrecked ourselves, we were doing so in order to get a baseline, because obviously there are some popular figures on Twitter who are, social justice warriors and left institutional leftists that need to be exposed as well. And so the first one is potential presidential candidate Liz Warren. Liz Warren got a 3.8.
Where are the trombones? We need the side trombones. Where are they? Are they anywhere? Where's that budget? Come on, we got that budget. I'm waiting for them.
And Leslie's community.
Finally.
You need to have that at the ready, because next up, Vox's own Ezra Klein.
Yes, next one, Ezra Klein, and we are getting there.
This is great. This is great. So we could talk about what a sexist Ezra Klein is, because his score is, this is 2.5. Yes.
I would have saved the gong. We still have a few to go.
Well, I have to say this last one is my favorite. Because reasons. So, yeah. One of the most outspoken women leftist figures in the middle of the Twitterverse, and who gets into fights with, say, presidential candidates on Twitter. Debbie Wasserman Schultz's score.
What?
Yes. 0.6. 6. The only person on this list, I think, that I can recall that has a lower score than Debbie Wasserman Schultz is the party of choice.
Brass got a
has a big
0.
fat 0.
And brass.
Got
And
0.
brass. That's right. Yes. So that is how your institutional leftists figure in this sample. And I just thought it was great to give the opportunity to score them. And this is the great thing about institutional leftists and social justice warriors. There's a lot of petard hoisting going on, I'm just saying.
Yes, but how dude are they?
Oh, we didn't do that, did we? We'll have to dude up some of these people next time. That's awesome. How dude or dudeme.com or I don't remember what the site is, but yeah, there's been some fun stuff coming out on Twitter that we could use to poke fun at the left with. It's great.
That there is. All right, you can take me off of the spotlight there, Leslie, because now I'm no longer necessary. My job. Okay, good. Just want to make sure.
I put it back to automatic. See, there I am.
Cartoon detectives for the win.
And I have my TV's on in the background, and I didn't have it. Well, I thought I had it muted, but I didn't. But the emergency alert system just went off, so Fishy and I are probably going to die any moment. I don't know. There's probably a tornado in Brazoria, and they feel like warning us or something.
But it's been fun, guys. Just in case we don't see each other again.
We just went through the upbeat ending segment, and now you have to drop this on.
Well, this has been our last show, probably. I don't know.
Oh yeah, because they could never carry on without us, Leslie.
Well, no, duh.
Right?
Why would they? They would have no reason to go on.
Who would put the topics in the show prep thread? We'd be done. It's over.
Well, yeah, and of course I loaded then up on my tablet. I loaded up my weather app, and there's no alerts on my weather app. So it may just be that AT&T Uverse wanted to test the emergency broadcast system. I don't know. Either that or there's a tornado headed for our house. We'll see. Life is a mystery.
It's good to be forewarned, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. We've really run over time on this show, haven't we? But we've used sound effects to good cause. We've blown through our sound effects budget. We've blown through our time budget, and we even had more topics that we've had to push to next week. So if we are here next week, we will have something to talk about. And not only did we make fun of ourselves and some liberal politicians, we made fun of guest hosts and our viewers. So that's a bonus. That's always a plus. Thanks Twitter and the Quienes Mas Feminist game. That was a callback to Quienes Mas Macho, an old Saturday Night Live game. That was fun. Okay, I'm old enough to know that. At any rate, I guess we're going to close the show for now and say tostada, everyone, and we will see you guys next week. And thank you for listening live on the refineryshow.com and chatting. And I wasn't even in the chat room today. I assume you guys had delightful, wonderful, brilliant conversation, probably because I wasn't there to add to the dumb in the chat. And we thank you all for being here this week and look forward to talking to you next week, which will be May 19th. And thank you guys very much. Bye.